It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, November 29th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that loves another Black Friday win.
I love it. And don't forget to buy this on Black Friday, my Flyers book.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. And to keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials, including Blue Sky, and here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Yes, Russ, you do have a book available on the Flyers. Before we dig into Flyers Rangers, let's hear just a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's called Philadelphia Flyers Images in Sports. It's been out for a little while. It's a lot of behind the scenes photos and little tidbits and anecdotes and things about the team. So it's not your average Flyers book. There's a lot of stuff you haven't seen.
That is amazing, and you can find it at all your favorite booksellers.
A lot of CVS's this time of year, believe it or not. Like the bigger CVS's, they carry it.
Wow, that's pretty cool. All right. Flyers versus Rangers. Of course, the Flyers won the game 3-1. And I think it's really interesting because the Flyers haven't been a team that's been consistent about getting off to a good start, right?
True.
And this was one of the best starts we've seen from them all season long, right?
Yeah, I think it was their best. I mean, they definitely came out like a house on fire, and that definitely helped. I think they had the Rangers stumbling for a while, and that was a big deal. And so yeah, the thing that we all were wondering was, okay, you got a 2-0 lead. This is really good. Now can you hold on to it?
Right. That is always the question in these circumstances with the Flyers. We've seen teams catch up, like especially, the Vegas game in particular. We saw that happen, even though they
Right.
played generally well in that one. The Golden Knights did catch them. I was wondering at first if Shesterkin was hurt just because he was stretching funny and he let those goals in up front, but he definitely got it together, so there was no issue there.
Yeah, I think the first one just caught him by
skater.
surprise, and then the second one, the Konechny, that was like Konechny went past the Rangers defense. I think
Mhm.
Shesterkin probably thought Trouba was going to pick him up. He didn't. So then it became a
Right.
one-on-one, and I just think that was just one of those things where Konechny beats him one-on-one, but then afterwards you saw, I mean, the Flyers could have had probably 4 goals in that game. And he, early on, especially, and then Shesterkin did start to make some really great saves, and he settled in, which is what he usually does.
I thought so, and he saved them, honestly,
No question.
it being an utter blowout in this game, and I think the Rangers played pretty physical overall, but I think the Flyers were up to the challenge in a lot of ways. I mean, if you look at the hit stats, it was 27-8 Rangers.
Well, we all think the hit stat was off because the first period there was no hits for the Flyers, and that seems impossible against the Rangers. But there were also no penalties until like midway through the second, which also
That's true.
seems impossible for a game against the Rangers. So there were some weird things going on in that game. But again, it's like, an early Black Friday game. So it's like maybe that played a part. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, and I thought the Flyers' structure, especially defensively, was better in this game. And, obviously, until the Rangers kind of poured it on a little bit,
Yeah.
it held pretty well for most of the game. John Tortorella thought so as well in terms of the overall team structure. He said, the game was going to end up the way it was because they couldn't finish. They had a lot of chances, and it stemmed from them playing forward, playing fast, checking forward, and winning battles in the neutral zone. And I think that's pretty spot on.
Yeah, I think most of that's true. I don't know if that was true, like definitely not to start the third and definitely at big stretches in the third. I don't think that was true. Fedotov did a really nice job. He kept them in because there were some really great scoring chances that were just missing, like hair misses. So I think that most of what John said is true. But Micah McCurdy posted something. He likes his fancy charts, and up on
Right.
Blue Sky, it was nice to see Micah on Blue Sky, and he was like, "Hey, John Tortorella didn't even shuffle his lines today," and I just said it
Nope.
was an off day. But because normally he does, but the minutes were a little crazy. The Travis Sanheim minutes, like, again, we'll recap this at half season and see where he's at physically, because this was way too much for a regular season non-overtime game. So that was, and even for
He
York,
was under 24 minutes.
okay, 23 and whatever is a lot.
Look, when we're talking it being 30, 31 in the worst of it,
Oh,
to me
okay.
24 seems pretty reasonable.
Okay.
But
And then you do,
maybe it was a little too high though.
yeah, and York right next to him, and I get it. That's his guy pairing with him, but he hasn't been back that long. So you just, those things aren't great. But yeah, for the most part, they did hold. But you do worry about guys getting banged up whenever we want to talk about that. I did notice something in the third.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about that, but you brought up the goaltending,
Yes.
and Fedotov had 22 saves on 23 shots, and I think that one of the things that I'm sure the Flyers broadcast mentioned this, but I saw it on the Rangers broadcast that they were very impressed with him because he wasn't getting a lot of action, but he was able to make the big saves when he needed to.
He was. I do think, rebound control is still something he's got to work on. And I do think he's got to do less with the stick, because there was a point where Panarin almost picked one off from him in the third period. He's got to do a little less with the stick. I sit next to a goalie some games, and it was it was brought up more than a few times that he should do a little less. Remember how Carter Hart used to do less with the stick and just let the defenseman he's going to have to learn to do that, because that's not his strength right now.
No, and we've called it a controlled chaos in the
Yeah.
past, and I think that's kind of still what we're looking at here,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it sometimes does make you a little nervous, but I feel like he knows what he's doing, and
He
so we just
does.
kinda gotta go with him in this
Yeah, I mean, for the
scenario.
most part, he's calm out there, so I give him credit for that, and I do think he's better than he was a month ago. So there's definite improvement. I mean, again, this is something that's just going to be ongoing with him.
You mentioned some guys getting banged up and wanting to keep track of that, and it's something we've been talking about in terms of the shot blocking and in terms of some of the other kinds of physical play that we've seen. The Flyers had 21 block shots today. It's a little high, but it's less than they have at the worst end of it in terms of the wear and tear. But what did you think?
Yeah, at one point Hathaway was definitely banged up
Oh
pretty good.
yes.
So we'll see if there's any longer term effect there. But Nick Seeler missed some shifts in the third period. Matter of fact, he couldn't get off the ice for one of them, was on one leg in the third period. So just because he has just come back not that long ago, you do have to kind of watch out for him with all the shots he blocks too. So there is that to look out for.
Yeah, I think so. But I think that, in this game it held, but we'll see if this leads to some injuries later on in
Yeah.
the season.
But Bobby Brink's play was really good. Like, he was one of their best forwards. This was maybe the best game I've seen him play as a Flyer, to be honest. And that was good. The pass from Foerster was good. At least he's contributing that way. So that was a big deal. I think Brink really was loaded with confidence after the game in the locker room, which was nice to see. So we'll see if he can build on that. Tyson Foerster still has to figure out, though, how to score again, but at least he was able to contribute for that.
Yeah, it's interesting because John Tortorella was asked post game in terms of like the Cates Brink Forster line, and if
Mhm.
that was like the best line in this game, and he wasn't going to say that, but he
No.
said, 3 out of the 4 lines were good, and make of that what you will.
Well, that's not
But
true, though. You know why that's not true? Because he only played Owen Tippett for 12 minutes. So how's that possibly true when he was on the second line?
Well, maybe that's the line that wasn't good. You have to guess. That's what I'm saying.
All right,
But
maybe.
but but he did say about Bobby Brink that it was, one of his best games away from the puck. And with the
That's
puck
true.
that he created a lot of turnovers, which was important. And especially when in the second period, Peter Laviolette switched up the Rangers lines very dramatically to try and get
Yes.
back into the game, and so they were matched up against better players than they were in the first period, and they stuck with it. And I think to a large degree, they did, and, that's, to their credit overall.
Yeah, that was a good point. And the reason I'm not going to say like it was the second line that was the bad line because Mitchkov played more than Frost and Tippett. Now there was a power play, so that's a
Right.
part of it. But I don't know if their minutes matched up exactly. Like, you know what I mean? So, but the Flyers' fourth line was really good today, and the Brink line was really good, no question. They had some good energy. Um, yeah, it was one where I don't think everybody was fully comfortable at the end. I don't think you could be, but it worked out.
No. Yeah, I wanna continue on Tyson Foerster, though, for
Yeah.
that line because, Torts said that Tyson's been inconsistent, which is true, but he thought that Forster played better. He just needs a little more out of him, and I think that's fair. I think he had some really good moments in this game, and that line played really well, but you can see room for improvement, right?
Yeah, I honestly look, I know John is going to value his defensive play more than his offensive play, but they need Tyson Forster to score goals.
They do.
So, and unless he's shooting the puck a lot, like even what he did this game isn't going to be good enough. But he had 3 shots, so at least there's 3. You want some of these young guys to be able to get like 6 on net in games. You do. So I just feel like, yeah, and maybe that's where it needs to be better. But the other part of his game is what keeps him in the lineup, no question.
Yeah, well, we're gonna talk more about that and some of the other guys who had some scoring chances as well, and kinda look at where they're trying to get the offense from these days, including Travis Konechny. We are going to do that coming up next. Some of the best events take place around the holidays, and there's so many of them to choose from. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite part of the Game Time app is that it's great for getting notified about last minute flash deals and their super deals so you know you're getting the best bang for your buck. Best of all, they have all in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout when you activate the feature, and tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
Here's the thing: we earn points on groceries, travel, and practically everything else we buy. But we should also be earning points on rent, one of our biggest monthly expenses. Built changed the game by letting renters earn high value points on rent and around their neighborhood. There's no cost to join Built. As a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and on everyday spending. Built points can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, and even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world you can redeem your Built points towards. Points could also be redeemed towards a future rent payment and unique experiences that only Built members can access. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, why not? Start earning points by renting now. And when you join built.com/lockedon, that's joinbuilt.com/lockedon. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl to start earning points with your rent payments today.
All right. On our Monday show, we are going to recap the Flyers versus Blues game happening tomorrow, Saturday night. We're going to preview that a little bit in this segment. Plus, it'll be Monday, so we'll have our nemesis of the week as usual. Always a good time, especially during the holidays, Russ.
Oh, yeah.
So, I want to talk a little bit more about where the Flyers offense was coming from in that game because I thought it was interesting that there were five different guys with four scoring chances in this game, which is good. Like,
Mhm.
because you want to diversify where your scoring is coming from. One of them,
Right.
of course, is Travis Konechny, who
Of
had two
course.
goals in the game, and you cannot discount what he's been doing, recently to the point where he's on a lot of people's Four Nations lists for Team Canada, which you would not have expected at the beginning of the season, right?
Sure. I mean, I'll believe that one when I hear it, only because there's so many guys on the team. But yeah, I think he's at least in the conversation.
Right, which to me is enough in my
Okay.
opinion,
Okay. And I get that. I do.
And but the other 4 guys on that list, we've talked about 2 of them already. Bobby Brink, Tyson Foerster, each had 4 scoring chances. Their line mate, Noah Cates, also had 4 scoring chances. He had a great two-way game, against the Rangers, I
Yeah,
thought.
Cates was really good. I mean, that was maybe the most confident I had heard Cates post game too. He's always a positive kid. Don't get me wrong, but this was probably the most confident I'd seen him. Like
Mhm.
where he was like, yeah, I think so. I think he feels like his game's coming around.
Right, and then the 5th person, Garnet Hathaway. Now, I think on paper, that might be unexpected, but actually having watched the game, he was net front a lot. He
Well, he
was
was one of the
pushing his
few. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
So
there wasn't enough of that.
he was very, very noticeable in that way, and you're right, there was not enough of that, and you look at there's, like, a bunch of guys missing from that list right there, one of whom is Joel Farabee. Now, he had 6 shot attempts in this game, 4 of them were unblocked. He missed the empty net once, and I
Right.
feel like in this game, the effort was there, but just he wasn't connecting it together.
Yeah, I think the effort's there really for those same three guys that we're talking about, but for some reason they just can't put it in. And so, I think it was there. Yeah, I think the effort was there, but just for some reason the puck's not going in.
Right, and then obviously there's Owen Tippett who is
He's on his
again
own island at this point. Like
he
he just is.
is. He is, and I just like, we keep saying, like, "Why doesn't he sit for a game? Why
It
doesn't
really
he
would
sit
help
for
him.
a game?" Yeah, and, we're gonna talk a little bit about time off that the Flyers are gonna have, but I
Yeah.
think Owen Tippett
It's not going to
needs
help
to
him.
utilize
Yeah, I
he
mean,
yeah.
it's only because he's struggling right now and he's still feeling it. I'm not sure the time off's good for him.
Yeah, I think so, but and I feel like with Sean Couturier, I feel like he had a good game, even though he wasn't really hugely impactful from a scoring perspective.
No, I mean, he had a good game. He was really good in the faceoff dot, but again,
Yeah.
just from overuse, and I know you might say, well, 19 minutes isn't that bad, but for Sean Couturier, it is. And he was
No,
lagging in the third
yeah,
period. He was.
I agree. I
Yeah.
really agree with you on that. Yeah, I think,
That's why
the
playing
fate
Frost 12 minutes didn't make much sense to me because I don't
right.
think Frost had a bad game at all. I thought his zone entry was good on the power play. Like I just, here's something else too. What that I picked up on the power play. If you want Matvey Michkov to be Matvey Michkov, don't have him carry up the puck all the way and then almost regrettably having to slingshot it back to a guy because they're telling him he has to do that. It
The
makes
slingshot
no
is the
sense.
worst. I hate it so
But it's
much.
really bad when you got a guy with this much talent who could clearly get into the offensive zone on his own, but was just like, okay, I got to slingshot this back because that's what they're telling me to do. Like you could see that was the case.
Completely, and I actually did question even though there was just 1 power play, you can't really, like, analyze the Flyers' special teams in this game at all, really, but I was a little surprised that they put power play 1 out there first in this circumstance just because Brink and Forrester, were playing
Had
extremely
some
well,
chemistry. Yeah,
had some chemistry. You can always trust Travis Sanheim, or maybe you mix it up a little bit and just say, have it be power play 2, but swap out Mitchkov for
right,
Tippett and then
right.
see what happens, right? I thought it would have been interesting for them to do it. I'm not like mad that they did what they did, but I just thought it would have been interesting to throw out power play 2.
It would have been. I think that was a game where it would warrant that, but No, they kind of go to a script on that, it seems.
They do sometimes. But yeah, I think overall, like you said, a really solid effort,
Hmm.
a second win in a row, this one in regulation, which
They
was
need the
nice,
regulation wins, as I pointed out. So that's a big thing for
especially
them.
against
A
division
division
rivals,
opponent.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's when it's going to
Yeah.
matter.
So, and especially because there are fewer in division games earlier in the season. And,
Correct.
as you go forward in the season, there's more and more of them. So, the more wins you can get in regulation, the better.
Yeah.
Uh, Turning our attention to the St. Louis Blues, who we are facing Saturday night. A lot has happened with the Blues since we
You think?
saw them last. The Flyers won versus the Blues on October 31st, 2-1. Goals from Brink and Hathaway, who we just talked about in that one. And, they're 4-5-1 in their last 10.
You're
Like
a little
not
better than that since the coaching change, though.
right. So that's the big thing. We did talk about it a little bit on this show earlier in the week just because Jim Montgomery has a
Right.
history with the Flyers, but
Yeah.
he's behind the bench now, like days earlier was behind the bench of the Boston Bruins. But I was thinking, I was wondering if Drew Bannister, the fired coach, is a potential candidate for the Phantoms down the line. Just because he's been a pretty successful AHL coach. I don't know
Eh,
if he'll want to go back down there, but it's just something in the back of my head.
yeah. I mean, it took Scott Gordon a little while to want to go back down there, if you remember. So I have a feeling
Yeah,
Bannister is going to feel the same way. But it's a good thought. I like the thought because yeah, he's terrific down there. And I don't think he was bad in the NHL. I just don't think that
right.
team was sort of like with him.
Geared
And
toward
they
him. Yeah.
yeah, and they're a veteran team, and they just probably weren't getting his message. And Montgomery's going to get through to him easier because he's just more seasoned as an NHL coach. That's all.
Right. And so, I think that St. Louis is kind of rocky right now, still trying to
Hmm.
get used to the new coach. Their last game, they actually shut out the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah.
So that was a really strong and important performance. They got all their goals in the first period, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Jordan Bennington getting the shutout in that game. He became the Blues all-time winningest goaltender with 152 wins, which that's a low bar for a team, I
They've
think.
they've been an organization like you can go back to like the late 60s when it's like Glenn Hall and guys like that. Cujo was there a short time. It seems like everybody's been there a short time. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
hey,
that's
good for
true.
Bennington though. He really has turned into a good goalie. I think people um were like a little surprised when he won the cup, and then they were like, "Oh, look, he's a fluke the next year." And then he got them back into the playoffs after that. And from what I was told about the last game or two, like he looks like he's in the groove now, and so maybe
Mhm.
that's going to help them, and that makes if Bennington plays against the Flyers, it's gonna be a harder game to win. Let's just put it that way.
Right. The one question mark is Pavel Buchnevich. He
Yeah,
was injured in the second period of that game. Still don't know 100% if he'll be back in the lineup there. So we got to kind of keep a lookout for that. But it should be a challenging game against the Blues, who are kind of a little extra motivated these
they're going to be
days.
hungrier than they were the last game. Like we know that
Yeah.
for sure. And so we'll see how that is. And there's a lot of trade wins going too. And it wouldn't shock me if the Blues get involved with that too. Now, Kevin Weeks reported that Niels Höglander is on the block from Vancouver, and
Right.
he's a pretty good player.
Very tempting.
I don't think they've utilized him right. So, you never know where he might end up.
All right. Well, it is the Thanksgiving weekend, and the prognosticators always say that, 90% of the playoff positions are set by Thanksgiving in the NHL. Is that the case for the Flyers? We're going to talk about that and other things about the team as a whole coming up next.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get 150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats for your live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I'm going to go with the Seahawks over the Jets on the money line. Just visit fanduel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's fanduel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right. So looking at the overall picture for the Flyers right now, you know, the team is over 500 for the first time since the very beginning of the season and are technically in this weird portion of the day that we are recording because there's a ton of games today and a ton of
13.
games tomorrow. Yeah. The Flyers are technically in a playoff position, but not so much when you look outside of that. But like, are the Flyers a playoff bubble team like they were last year? Which we wouldn't have said so a month ago, but now could be.
I mean, they're in it as far as points. I still don't think the math is great, so I still think they're in the same spot they were last year. I do.
Right, which is a playoff bubble team.
Okay, yes, but I just think reluctantly I'm going to say, okay, sure, but I don't put a lot of stock in it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I do either. It's just that that's technically where they
I
are
know.
at this moment in time, and this is a benchmark position that a lot of people use in terms of trying to predict who will end up making the playoffs. And obviously the Rangers have a couple games in hand on the
Right,
Flyers right now, and even though they have the same number of points there's a bit of a gap between those two teams and the top 3 at the moment. And unless the Capitals collapse, I don't see that top 3 changing for
right.
the rest of the season, just given how the rest of the Metro division
And they're
looks.
playing without Alex Ovechkin. Like they'll eventually get him back.
Mhm. They will, and that's why I say that it's,
Right,
like, really unlikely. Now what's interesting is the Atlantic division
right.
because there's all kinds of chaos going on over there, and I think that's gonna have an effect on where the Flyers end up.
It will. The only thing is when it comes down to like Tampa or Boston, we all assume Boston's going to wake up, but maybe they don't. Maybe this is just an off year. But Tampa's going to make the playoffs, and if the only spot for Tampa to make the playoffs is that second wild card, they're probably going to get into the second wild card. Like that's
Right.
just the way Tampa is. They know what to do. They have the horses still, enough of them to get there. They're not going to win the Stanley Cup, but they have enough to get there, and so they're a dangerous team to have to chase.
Right, and I think, that's probably how it's gonna end up, and the Flyers could be a team or 2 or 3 probably outside the playoff picture this year based on how things have been going. That would be my guess,
Hmm.
uh, s for the way things end up. But you look at, to your point about Tampa, they just won in overtime against Nashville. Man, Nashville just lost twice in
Nashville
the
is
3rd
getting
time in a
crushed. I,
row.
I, I
Oh
could
my
see Barry
god.
Trotz behind the bench before we know it. I could see
That's
it.
what I said.
I
We'll
know, and when you
see.
said it, it made sense, and it seems more likely every day.
Alright. So, I think it's really the Atlantic Division that the Flyers are competing against at
I
this
I
point.
do too. Yeah, I think so.
So, it's also the beginning of the holiday season, as your favorite time of the year, it seems, Russ, and so you have to start off, like, with your nice and naughty list,
Okay.
to get your shopping done here, and I feel like there's some very clear nice and naughty lists on the Flyers in terms of what John Tortorella thinks, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think nice is always like Travis Sanheim, Travis Connect. Anybody named Travis, really. If they had another Travis,
Yes.
it'd probably be okay. Uh, and then naughty, it's always Morgan Frost first, and
Right.
and then everybody else after that. Although I think Owen Tippett now is on the
Mm.
naughty list.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's not really talking about it that way, but the fact that he's saying nothing says
Right.
a lot
Says a
as
lot
well.
because he used to always talk about him a lot.
Right. Right. And yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty true to a large degree here. And I think that, there are other guys that he's just not going to say anything about because they're leaders in the room and he's
Right.
not gonna comment on that. I think he started to, like, say a few things, like critiquing Scott Lawton that he may not have said in the past. I think that, he said very little about Ristolainen, which I think is interesting given how well Ristolainen has been
Yeah, I think
playing.
I don't know why he wouldn't praise him a little bit. He should. I do think he's been probably their third best defenseman. I think Sanheim, Andre, then him. I think
Yeah,
they've been the mainstay. Sealer's been good, but he's also been injured too, right? So
right.
I don't think you're seeing the best Nick Sealer at the moment. That's
Yeah.
not his fault.
Yeah, Torts is definitely keeping his cards, like, close to
He
the
is.
vest here this year. I think that aspect of it has been really interesting. The Flyers have a few days off after tomorrow's game against St. Louis. They don't play again till next Thursday against the Panthers. So, like, they've got some time. What should they work on?
They're probably going to work on their tan. I imagine they're going to go down early and work on that. I think they should work on the power play. I also think that guys should be shooting after practice and work on hitting
Yep.
the net, even if it's no real goalie in net and they just put the cardboard guy in there.
Yeah,
Then
the
shoot it
shooter tutor.
right. Shoot on him. But I just think they have to do it. And we're never going to see this, right? But why not have a contest on one of these days off where like Torts puts up a prize, like, I don't know, something that means something to these guys, whether it would be no practice for the next time after a game or something if you win the shooting contest. Like put something on it, like make it fun, but also have them work at it. I think it would be a good thing.
Yeah, I think so too. But they do have a little bit to work on. And I think shooting and the power play are very good things to add to that list. After the Panthers next week, they also face the aforementioned Boston Bruins, who are still a little bit of a mess, and Utah for the first time. So we'll get to see those jerseys in
The eventual
person.
Yeti. It'll be Yeti
Yes.
next year, but yeah.
Yeah. So looking forward to all of that. We'll be back on Monday to talk Flyers versus Blues, nemesis of the week, and so much more. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions or Flyers thoughts, let us know on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ, and I'm on those same socials at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey, become a fantasy hockey expert, get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.